All right, let's talk about marketing strategy and segmentation in particular. Okay, there's three basic components in a traditional marketing strategy: segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And the first element is segmentation. We're going to talk a little about segmentation and what it is, what it's about, how it works. And then as we progress through the course, we're going to go into some specific things on targeting and positioning. Okay, so the marketing managers need to make several decisions, and the decisions they make typically are around the marketing mix. And the marketing mix is really how marketers communicate value to their potential customers. And the elements of the marketing mix that we're going to talk about are product, price, product, and promotion. And the essence, before we get into the marketing mix elements, it really is segmentation. So it's really a stepwise program as we go: segmentation, targeting, and then positioning. These are decisions that the marketing manager makes along the way. But I just want you to keep in mind that this all goes in terms of how we communicate value, and how we actually communicate value is ultimately through the marketing mix. So just to review, and this is some of the things that we went over previously, but the decisions that you make in terms of positioning, your target market selection, etc., is really going back to this value. And value is communicated through the marketing mix, again, which is product, promotion, price, and distribution. Okay, so marketing strategy. We went through all the definitions and components of strategy in the academic framework definitions of marketing strategy. But at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is how we're going to fulfill the needs and wants of the customers. And that comes back to how we're going to communicate value. And so if we select the right combination of who we're going to target and how we're going to communicate value, the 4 Ps, we're going to actually have an advantage over the competitors or the competitive set in our industry or category. So what the marketing manager really needs to do is decide the best way to create, communicate, and capture or deliver value. Okay, so remember how we laid out some of these concepts, and we wanted to talk about the core element of marketing strategy is the value proposition. So we explored the business model and different business model elements, and you can see this is this review from the previous one, that the value proposition is at the center of decisions that the firm has to make. So remember, value is created and delivered to customers through the business model, and at the end of the day, the business model in itself is the source of competitive advantage. Okay, remember, value is the core of any marketing decisions that's being made. So the choice of who your target is, the selection of benefits that we select to communicate, and the ultimate reason to believe from our customers and potential customers, value is the center point, right? So everything comes out of what we have to offer to that customer. So value is the center point, and just keep that in mind as we go forward, is that you can anchor on value in terms of who that value matters to. That becomes our target. And then what value elements we choose to communicate, that ultimately will become our positioning. I want you to take a look at this slide and just kind of read through some of the questions that exist from a customer criteria, company criteria, and competitor criteria standpoint. And really this is about assessing the value proposition and the choices of value in terms of how you're delivering it to your customer. Okay, in order for a firm to provide value to its customers, they have to understand what their customer needs are. And there's fundamental components that we talk about here that really a business only exists if it has customers. And I don't know if you can argue that, but that's something that sometimes in my classes people want to have a discussion and argue about, and we can maybe talk about that in a discussion board on the side. And the other element on this slide that's really important is in satisfying a need is the source of how a business is providing value. And the question that we're going to talk about as we get more into segmentation is, who do we provide value to? So let's really talk about segmentation. So in the 1950s, how people would communicate value is typically mass market television advertisements and newspaper ads that are trying to reach as many people as possible and really trying to talk to everybody. And what happened over time is that's changed, and we could really start talking to, today we talk directly to a particular individual. And so now we talk about one-to-one marketing. So we talked about mass marketing and one-to-one marketing. And really segmentation is really that ground between the 1950s and today where we have the ability to talk to specific groups of people or even individuals. So, this cartoon actually illustrates a position example, but it also looks at segmentation because it looks at a car that's exactly the same car, and it shows the salesperson talking to one consumer that is going to have value that's going to be appeal to him in a different way than the woman with the child. And so what she cares about, it's safe. What the guy might care about, that it rocks or it's high performance, etc. So based on that particular individual's wants and needs, I'm exploring different wants or communicating different wants and needs to that individual. And that's really what segmentation is, and ultimately as we go into positioning, it's what values we choose to communicate to that particular customer set. Okay, basically segmentation is deciding which customers we want to deliver value to, or selecting the customer in terms of who's going to value the attributes of the product or services that we're offering more. And so really I need to actually ask two questions, and it's always good to ask the simple questions. So who they are and what they do. So typically what we've all you hear about segmentation, it's really who they are, and that's really looking at families with babies, teenagers, men, women. So there's different variables that we can choose in terms of categorizing or talking about who people are. The more difficult part, and what's really changed over time in marketing, is looking at the behavioral segmentation in terms of what they do. Now I can learn a lot about you, about your behavior, your online behavior, etc., and I can communicate value that I think is going to benefit you based on what I know that you do and what you like to do. Okay. Segmentation is really about grouping customers in different ways or various ways, and you can do it a lot of different ways. And we're probably all really familiar with demographic profiling, where it's looking people by gender, age, marital status, sex, etc. But there's lots of other ways to do it. Another familiar way that we've all seen before is by geography, where they live, if they live in the south, in the north, etc. Psychographics or psychodemographics is a more complicated one because it's based on more behavioral insight rather than like a variable that you would have in terms of age, sex, gender, etc. And it's actually more complicated, but it's actually more powerful because you can connect with people from a group they belong to, and behavioral things that you can either observe or get insights through from data that exists. So some of the behavior that we use to group customers can be purchasing behavior, it can be lifestyle, it could be even in B2B settings in terms of how often people order, do they bundle their orders together, etc. So different behaviors in B2B or B2C can be used to actually create these groupings or create this segmentation for us to communicate to those groups separately. Basically, this slide just looks at some usual segmentation categories for grouping customers together, and you can just review this. Really at the end of the day, the whole premise behind segmentation is to allow us to spend our marketing dollars more efficiently, because we can communicate to one group of people versus another group of people, and it allows us to spend our dollars to that group rather than mass marketing and trying to communicate to everybody. Understanding how customer types are different allows us to actually target and communicate to that segment. And we want to look, because sometimes these people might think differently. They also might be able to be persuaded differently. So you can look at people's preferences. Some people want to be communicated to by email. Some people want to be communicated to on their cell phone, etc. So the more we know about that behavior, the more we could communicate our value more efficiently and effectively to that particular segment. So segmentation allows us to communicate different value elements to different customers, but it also allows us to group our customers in terms of which customers are more valuable to the company. We can, through the segmentation, one of the segmentation variables were which customers are the ones that are most valuable, which are the customers that are costing us more money to serve. And so what happens, it's really important for companies to understand the value of the particular customers they serve. It's really interesting, but a lot of companies don't really have a good understanding of who their most profitable customers are. And by not knowing that, they're really wasting a lot of money and leaving a lot of money on the table by maybe ignoring their most profitable customers or spending too much money trying to service customers that are not profitable at all. So there's a lot of things that companies can do to try to get at who are their most profitable customers, such as looking at customer lifetime value or historic value of the customer. And we're going to read a couple articles that go into more detail on lifetime value or customer lifetime value. And I think just want you to get a sense that it's segmentation in addition to value for us to communicate value. It's important for us as a company to know who to communicate value to and where we're going to get best return on those dollars. So segmentation is a hot topic and everybody wants to do it, but the challenge is it's not a magic bullet and it's not always useful. You know, this is an example of a survey of 200 CEOs or survey, and a big majority of them had done a segmentation project, but only 14% of the people that did a big segmentation project derived value from it. And that could be for a lot of reasons, but it just shows that it's not the magic bullet and they think that it's going to solve all your marketing challenges by conducting in-depth segmentation probably, and it doesn't necessarily work that way. So you should be cautioned in terms of segmentation as a end-all be-all.